face checking, and quite honestly, Anarchy win this because the Silver Spurge said no.
Absolutely.
Winning this game because he played out of his goddamn mind.
Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to, like, the amount of agree there is here. There was such a heavy throw on so many angles here from Anarchy. They drafted a wonderful composition, had it all lined up for perfection, and then Mizzou hit them hard. But Mizzou falters to their greatest weakness. They don't know how to close out a game. And we saw this time and time again. They had Baron buff and went for a dragon when they had perfect control to rush Basin, when they had all of this going for them. And you saw all these little macro mistakes stack up and stack up and stack up. And like you said, you had great performance, especially Silver Spurge, Tacos de Harina, respectively. They came through, they hit hard, and they carried, and they brought us back towards what was an Anarchy victory. Even when Anarchy at times did not look like they fully deserved to come through on the win team.
I'll say.
And, oh my gosh. Congratulations to Anarchy. More than anything here. That's a tough series to win at the end of the day, but they were essentially digging their own graves through it and then clawing their way out at the same time.
Yeah, and it's more like Silver Spurge kind of put everyone in a knapsack and started climbing his way out of the hole, because at the end of the day, it came down to that final team fight. You saw how amazingly, I can see you just jittery about this, I am too, and like how Silver Spurge gets this insane binding towards the end. Actually, just oh my gosh, the name is escaping me. It's Ghost Toasties. He's zoned out of the fight. This incredibly uber powerful Jin in the late game can't actually do anything, and by the time he can, the rest of his team aren't actually there. So Anarchy, Fallen Paladins, I agree. It wasn't the cleanest game of League. I would argue it's the dirtiest game of League I've ever seen, but as opposed to fast and dirty, it was dirty and excruciatingly long. Anarchy do come through in the end off of that final team fight, and I think Dia's the one who said it. At that point, spawn timers are so long, whoever won that fight won the game.
Right. There was a few situations, I'm gonna be honest here, where I really thought that statement as a whole was like, oh, whoever wins Elder wins games. Oh, whoever gets this last Baron wins the game.
Yeah.
Whoever wins this team fight wins the game. These, I can't say words like that on XLNC. These guys came through and they showed us completely. Every single time we had a preconceived notion on what the victory or the outcome was going to be, it went completely the opposite direction. And beatdown, I might just have to relearn League of Legends at this point.
Yeah, it might not be necessary, but I definitely understand the feeling after a game like that, back and forth, to the point where, we didn't know what was happening anymore. We didn't know who was in control, who was winning the game, why people were face checking. There must be some meta we're not aware of. Solo face checking into the perma-stun that is, just off the top of my head, Taric Pantheon Jin.
Yeah.
But
one major critique here, array here for Anarchy Fallen Paladins. There was a lot of systemic feeding across the board, the bleeding that came out from Anarchy as a whole, but it was
oh, did we lose? Oh, and it seems like we lost Zephyr. To his point though, it's true, we did see a lot of I actually really love that term, systemic feeding. I'm gonna take that for my own uses from the side of Anarchy, definitely getting too brazy with their early lead that they definitely shouldn't get normally, all things considered, with their composition. And you know what, let Zephyr finish his point, because I think he's back. Okay,
I am. All right, we're good. Thank you for the transition there. Yes, Array, notably, like I said, did not truly come online till that 40-minute mark, being that skirmish front lane titan that really disrupts and separates team fights. Throughout most of the game, we saw a lot of issues regarding positioning, and generally being prepared for major objectives and controlling the additional lead he got at the very beginning. And due to that, we saw the Bearded Lady and Fuzzy Owl find their footing into this game, and then thus enabled Mizzou as a whole. Major props to them looking towards game 2, which is where we got to start shifting this discussion as we get ready here. You need to have consistency. Anarchy's able to play these team fights. They're able to come through as a team, but you cannot have such a destructive self tendency across the board here. And I'm picking on Array because it was the most apparent here. But to be honest, everyone looked really bad at one point or another.
I think that's a fair statement. Definitely, consistency is one of the most important things in that the next game, just based on what we've seen here. Not only that, though, I think it's understanding your team comp a little bit more. Again, we talked about it. Anarchy, you draft mid to late game. You have a great front to back, an excellent team composition once everybody gets those 2 to 3 item power spikes. Why are you fighting at 10 minutes? Why are you trying to start skirmishes at 10 minutes? It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't work with the win cons they establish for themselves. So understanding those win cons is going to be key as well in the game too. And same for Mizzou, because they didn't prioritize securing those early drakes, getting vision control on the bottom side river, because when you play early game compositions, early drakes are do or die. Because if you get to a point where the late game composition managed to be able to get the early drakes and then they get to come online, there's usually not a ghost of a chance of you, the early game team composition, getting that soul.
B-Town, we've got the gold graph here now.
We do.
For everyone to see. You know, I've seen Mount Everest, but it pales in comparison to this game.
Oh my goodness.
That is amazing. Just to acknowledge the fact that Mizzou had such a dominant lead, broke it, just insanely broke it, slammed it back forward, broke it again, slammed it back again, and then broke it for a loss.
Wait, yeah, they were in the lead when they lost the game. Am I reading this correctly?
Yes!
That's insane. They at one point they had an 8,000k gold lead, and you can start to see where the mistakes coming through. If you're just looking at this graph, you can see where it, especially around the 30-minute mark, starts to really plummet, and it never really got as high as its peaks from that point on. Just because it shows how towards that mid to late game, they won some fights, they got some key objectives, but they didn't make use of their first Baron. They couldn't really win too many team fights after that 30-minute mark. So you can kind of see that was where things started to fall apart for Mizzou, even though it was very back and forth if you look towards, say, the 45-minute mark.
Before we get into Pro Draft here, given our discussion here, just to update everyone as well with the Heavy League as a whole coming out of the first games of all these series, before we really get into it. Anarchy Fallen Paladins takes game 1 against Mizzou. Lotus takes game 1 against Booyah Exile. CGC takes game 1 against FGCU. And Vlad Banners only takes game 1 against Y.
Oh, and we lost Zephyr again. Luckily, he gave you the last score line. So that is just a bit of an update to see how things are going. I think Lotus taking the first one is probably the most interesting to noteworthy thing going on right now. Zephyr is back. We can get into Pro Draft, and Ari's banned again. Zephyr, I don't like it.
I don't care what you don't like. Mizzou, hopefully pulling off the same concept here. Take away heavy top lane priorities. This time they allow the Orin to go through the ban phase, which means the Aatrox is now, of course, on the board. Shen has been pulled off, but currently it's looking to be nearly identical. Samira, Jin, Tarek, they're lining it up exactly the same. Just throw in the Alistar. Why not? Just complete the picks. Go ahead.
I mean, it is still a really good game. It's still a really good bottom lane, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it again. You can still go for Nautilus, Leona, both still lane well enough into what we're seeing. Nope, I don't like that. I don't like that, Zephyr. Really?
I do.
I don't.
Why?
Uh, well, in lane, it will have some uses outside of lane, but it's going to be tough. It will be a lot harder for this Rakan to be able to serve as more of a frontline versus an Alistar. But it depends on what Fallen Paladins or what Paladins are going to pick going forward. But in lane, it's definitely not the best pairing. You need more CC than you need more hard CC rather than the knockup to really lane well with Samira, especially into Jhin and Taric, who are going to be looking to lock you down quite a bit.
I will say it's setting up Fallen Paladins for an aggressive team fight composition, especially now that we see the Hecarim come through here.
True.
You are able to disrupt, separate, and splice most of these players in half come that mid to late game. And that's very important when you're trying to get some of your carries activated. The more pressure you can peel away from them, the better. And I feel like Rakan and Hecarim do that just absolutely fantastically right now. Yes, you are correct. Rakan, not quite the most aggressive support to pair into the Samir, and they definitely can be played around and capitalized on from Ghost Toasties on that Jhin, which was so fantastic in game one. But I definitely think our strengths here for the Fallen Paladins was definitely their team fight phasing, and seeing them draft towards that once again is something I like.
Yeah, definitely still looking towards that scaling here. We're going to see, although I like that they pick a jungler like Hecarim's going to power farm, but once he gets to level 6, once the Trinity Force comes through, he will be a menace on the Rift that Fallen Paladins are going to want to play around here. Mizzou answer with the Graves, another strong farming jungler at the moment, is going to be just as active around the map as well. So they're looking to do a lot of the same things here, just a little more utility if I'm looking towards the Hecarim because of the Onslaught of Shadows.
Moving forward, ban phase, we're going to get two completely new mid laners on this one. Vel'Koz and Lux both being banned out. That Aatrox, which did slip through, is going to be punished and pulled away here from the hands of Fallen Paladins. So the aggressive roll over top lane is not quite in session yet. And the Volibear from Mizzou off that first pick is going to make for a very difficult time here now. Fallen Paladins have to find some way to sustain this out and deal with the monster now that is the Lightning Bear.
And they're hovering Orianna, which would be a pretty solid choice. Yes, really good for the team fight, really good scaling into that mid-late game as well. Is going to be really strong and a good way to diversify that damage profile so that you're not just building all AD. Makes it harder for the tanks like Volibear to itemize against you. And it just gives you, again, like you said, a team fighting option. That Shockwave is an excellent team fighting ultimate. Really easy for you to throw that command protect onto the Hecarim as he just runs straight into the enemy team and press that R key. And wow, Cho'Gath going into the top lane.
Paladins plays it. Paladins plays it. They've got it under their belt. They threw it here last week in the game against FGCU, so it's no surprise to see it pop up again. Personally, the strengths into Volibear, while Volibear has a lot more power potential team fight wise in playing into that early game, you have now created the greatest frontline and protection of peel here for Paladins into team fight, and it's going to be the securing potential across the board now on every objective that's uncontestable no matter what. I like it. It solidifies one of the biggest weaknesses I saw with this comp, which was the fact that they didn't have any front presence. And while it isn't the strongest, you have to recognize Ornn, Mordekaiser, Shen, Aatrox, some of the best picks have been taken away here, and it's a Fallen Paladins favorite. You gotta go with it. You gotta go with it.
Yeah, considering what's left, it's definitely a good choice based on the champ pools. And it works out really well because, again, Fallen Paladins have drafted themselves into this similar scenario where they're going to be hella strong into this late game. Come 2 to 3 items, they're going to be damn near unstoppable. You look at Cho'Gath especially, who's just going to get more and more HP, become a thicker and thicker boy as time goes on. Is going to be a much harder front line to be able to actually get through once we get into the later game here. Mizzou, they did, for that last pick that we didn't get to touch on yet, did draft LeBlanc, is a really good pick, a really good into this composition, because again, you want to be able to bypass that front line, sneak and get kills, get out. LeBlanc is great at that. LeBlanc also lanes great into Oriana, who struggles against assassins. So I really think this is a good way to round out Mizzou's composition, because it does give him an answer to what appears to be an infallible front line on the side of Fallen Paladins.
I also think that one of the big things that Mizzou does do well here, we saw it in that first game, much to the fault of Fallen Paladins playing it kind of aggressively and face checking at times. They get good picks, whether they capitalize on them, find an objective, push a lane, whatnot, who cares? They get good picks, and they've drafted themselves a composition that is looking to make that happen at any stage of the game. Whether you're diving with LeBlanc and Volibear, coming through with heavy damage from Graves and Jhin, or securing the safety into these major dives with the Taric supporting you through and through. And it needs to happen. Mizzou needs to find this, or else Fallen Paladins are going to run it back like we saw in game one. While it wasn't, it's not going to be as beefy as it was in game one. It's still going to be just as disgusting now that there's 10 times the amount of CC online here.
Yeah, that's right. And we are going to get to that point in the game where if somebody face checks the wrong brush, they're basically going to get hands off keyboard stunned, as I like to call it. And just absolutely obliterated there. So vision control. Yeah, no, I just mean like you're stunned so long, you might as well just hands off the keyboard. Don't hold your like. There's no point. And at that point, that's why I want to say like they gotta really prioritize vision as you get to a certain point in this game, just so you can avoid death brushes and stuff like that being created there for both of these teams here, but especially I think Fallen Paladins, because if you look at Mizzou CC, like it's all over the place. Like they have so much ways to lock you down, and they're gonna play off picks. Even though they have an established front line, I think the Scum strengths are going to be in grabbing picks with the LeBlanc, anybody you can isolate who is overstepping in a side lane.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say it's one of the only and the few tools that they do have available. We did see really great play skill-wise here from every individual player on Mizzou. So it's not to say that these team fights can't look good or they can't take those leads and transition them into dominant, just carrying potential across the board, given that I don't think team fighting is quite the direction that this team likes to go in. Either way here, I'm looking and it's rough for me to find an alternative win condition. You want to see multiple paths towards success, and when you're running into what Anarchy Fallen Paladins has set up here, it's looking a bit one-sided at times.
I think that's a pretty fair statement here. Again, like Mizzou, it seems like this is always a story with them. They're on a clock. We keep saying it. It keeps being true.
It's
past a certain point. It is.
It's cooldowns.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, we get to a certain point. Once those item spikes come through, unless you don't solidify extremely hard wins in that early game, how does Fallen Paladins lose? It doesn't make sense to me. Outside of unplugging your monitors at the 30 to 35 minute mark, Fallen Paladins, they win this game. They win the series.
Well, that's the predicted analysis, and to be honest here, Mr. Beatdown, if we're going off predicted analysis and what we're able to capably predict, game one is definitely not showing in our favor here, because Mizzou,
no,
they looked a lot better than we expected. While they did not win, dude, fix up like maybe one or two major issues, just send it more in the just better direction, and you got a victory. Real easy. Mizzou had it. We can go back and look at that gold lead if you want to see Mount Everest again. It's a beautiful sight. But with every mountain, there is a peak and probably a valley, and that's what we had to have occur here from Mizzou. So it still is looking to be Anarchy favored. But is there any last thoughts, Beatdown, before I throw this to break and start sending it on our way to our boys here on the casting booth tonight?
No, only thing I can think of really is that I hope Mizzou can get themselves early game leads, not unlike what they got to do in game one. If they're able to do so, I think with how they've been able to punish and actually make use of some leads that we saw in last game, they actually could win it out here in game two. But the early game, as always, so very important.
Absolutely. Moving forward here, just to give a little bit of an update because it has absolutely blown my brain. CGC has already won their series in a 2-0 fashion against
There you go.
FGCU before we are even into our second game. So the monster continues to live on in such a continually dramatic fashion, and my predictions and beatdowns predictions as well look just still very, very good. But with all that being said, we've got to get the ads rolling and everything going forward here as we move towards the actual cast as a whole. So we'll be right back bringing you what will be an exciting and most likely or probable final game here of this series, unless Mizzou can pull themselves back into us and show us a different beast. Stay tuned and stick around.
Hello. Did you see Yavol's post? My face when I die to. Oh my lord, Paul, we've made it back to the rift. I thought our time off, it was going to be as long as our time on it, and I don't know if I actually have that long left in my lifespan, but now that we're here, I'm still in that headspace where I'm not quite sure who's going to throw first, because that's what it felt like game one was all about, and right now I'm looking for not only myself, but these teams, specifically Mizzou, to get their heads right back on straight and come at us with another one of what looked like one of the cleanest early games we've seen so far.
Yeah, so a lot of things to address here. Like, I don't know about you, I literally haven't spoken since that ending because I was like, oh my god, if they do this again, my voice is gonna be gone. But in both teams, I think there was like a mutual understanding, like, don't you dare pick 3 tanks again. Like, please don't do this to us. Which I like to see from both teams. I think they picked both of them kind of double down on the aggressive parts that worked, and they're just going to go all in on them, which I think is really interesting. And unlike last game where I came into it and I was very weary of Array on the Silas and some other choices, I really like both of these comps for a variety of reasons that I'm sure we'll get into it as it goes, but I think both teams have to feel, one, exhausted, and two, kind of, you know, low-key PO'd about how that one ultimately went because it just took so long. But I think both teams coming in have to feel half decent in that their comps can execute a whole bunch of different things.
And I think that part of that is that last game, because it went on for so long, because it was so team fight heavy, we really saw what was a little bit of an awkward team fight draft last game be shored up because you had so much time to identify exactly what you were missing. Which sounds kind of weird and counterintuitive that a longer game that felt a little bit odd would actually lead you towards a better draft, but I feel like that's exactly what's happened for these teams, and now it's time for us to see whether they can play out the early phase in the same or similar ways to in the sorts of levels of confidence that they'll have.
And I think we're seeing that sort of with Polar, who we both agree is someone that they need to enable in order to win here. If you're Mizzou, you need to enable him, and you have to give him a lot of agency. Where they're giving him one of the best early game top laners in general, right? And you're putting that into a Cho'Gath, hoping to just decimate early in offense. And while they're sticking with the Samir, and to some degree I find it questionable, but that's what they're going to roll in with. You're going to have a lot of activation early on in this game. And I think both teams are going to kind of be happy to try to win this one, or at least get it to a winning point by 18 or 24 minutes rather than 54.
Yeah, and I think that part of that also comes in with Fuzzy Owl's pick as well, because we started talking about the Samira, and instantly I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember thinking that was really good backline access that they've dropped themselves, but it looks like Anarchy Fallen Paladins want to shut it down early as Array throws in a little gank off the side there. They don't know that Polar is here just yet, though. Silver Splurge just going to spot him out and going to be on the retreat. Has to burn his barrier as well, but fortunately, just barely gets out with his life. Accelerate is roamed down. It's a little bit too late to make anything happen. Array now being cornered as well, needs to be careful. And Mizzou, they're shoving Anarchy right back into the lanes. They're trying to leave them, but there's so much damage for Mizzou that they're able to keep the game exactly where they want it.
Yeah, and that was really well played by Mizzou. Ooh, the chase DC tacos. Adios.
Instantly goes down. His support roaming up to try and involve himself in that mid-fight means that Tacos has no way to survive, even with the mobility of Samira. And it's gonna cost him.
Bearded Lady might be a little bit in trouble if Fuzzy Owl can't get here fast enough, but he's getting there.
Yeah, he wins that easily, and right now, actually, with the double kill onto Bearded Lady, maybe even a follow-up kill on Silver Splurge, who doesn't have the flash right now. A lot of AD on this guy. Should pick it up, but Fuzzy Owl gets it with the last auto, stealing his jungler's kill, as is only expected of the greatest mid laners in heavyweight.
Yeah, and really, really well played. And I caution saying this because, hey, we saw 4-0 before, and you know what happened after that? I don't know either. But but now that 4-0 lead, I think, is going to be a bigger difference maker for this reason. Graves just is obviously such a strong jungler throughout the entire game. You're letting Ghost Toasties get an early pickaxe. You're giving Fuzzy Owl a little bit more gold in the pocket here. Now that he's going to back, and you're going to give an Assassin the ability to potentially take out a Samira that was entirely irrelevant in the last game. And so you're really executing a lot of what you want to, and that's cutting out a lot of what Anarchy Fallen Paladins was going to try to do into this Mizzou comp.
Yeah, because so much of this draft was adaptation, right? And that means that when gold comes into your pocket, whether it be on Silver Splurge, on Array, or on Bearded Lady and Fuzzy Owl, it's going into these picks that have adapted to suit what is the same bot lanes from both teams, what were such important power spikes and powerhouses in the first game have now been hard countered, and because of the gold that's invested into those hard counters, I think that we're gonna have what should be a lot more of a one-sided mid-game when it does come to those small skirmishes that turn into team fights.
Yeah, you know, because a lot of those swords just like champion base, like Polar should be a Cho'Gath still at level 5. It should not be close. Bearded Lady should be Array now, who's falling behind on a Hecarim as a 2-0 Graves. Like a lot of these things just kind of like play themselves out here, and Accelerate trying to prove me wrong, but Polar's just gonna have a lot of power, especially if he gets that level 6 here before Accelerate. He might be able to go for a kill.
Yeah, I'm checking the XP right now because they're both about halfway there, and Polar with the wave shoving into him shouldn't hit the level first, but if he does manage some sort of miracle push onto this cannon wave, there's a world where he hits the 6th version of Ray, knows that, so he's coming up to cover his top laner.
Yeah, and he's gotta be careful of Bearded Lady and Fuzzy Owl are there. He's gotta be watching his mini-map to know, like, Silver Spurge has gotta be telling him, hey, you might have a 3-on-2 here, top side.
And the ult does come in there. Oh my lord, he chomps down on Array. Bearded Lady walks him right up, chunks him out, and even with no red buff, I thought that we were going to see a Ray coming out, but Polar ticking the level 6 there, secures the kill, and he's burned his ultimate. Accelerate burning his as well, just for the stack on a minion, means that we will not see any trades back in that top side anytime soon.
Yeah, Polar on that Volley Bear. Volley Bear not what he used to be. I mean, he used to be massively overpowered in the early game that would carry over much more easily and seamlessly into that mid and late. Now it's fallen off a bit, and we'll see that over the course of the game. But that early game power, you see that ultimate that jumps in, big chomp, game over there for Array. And so that's a beautiful play topside that puts them up 2.5K gold. Is really continuing to give them control of the game and of the Rift.
It really is, and it's because of, like you say, the ability for them to be able to spread that advantage, and Graves being so much more efficient at carrying it. Right now, I'm looking at the win conditions as well for Anarchy, Fallen Paladin, and where they can sort of look to come back into this game, because Taco's the Arena, even though he is behind in that kill, is still up CS in his lane. That's going to be really important for them as they continue forward.
Yeah, if they can, as we're getting into this mid game, if you're able to get this Orianna 2 items and you're able to find like a really clean shockwave into Inferno trigger, I mean, that's just GG. You should be able to decimate a team like this that doesn't have a true tank. You're still building like a la Bruiser on Polar, right? And so you don't have someone to just eat all that damage for you, or to just tank long enough to help you, turn a fight like an Ornn might be able to, and we saw that last game with Accelerate. So I think maybe this is a game where they are able to unlock Tacos a little bit more. Now, if they keep having these early game struggles like they have to this point, being at 0-5, maybe not, but that win condition is still more than possible.
Yeah, actually, so a very quick thing. As we keep panning down to the bot side as well, we keep seeing Samira use that Blade Whirl, one of her most important safety abilities, especially into people like Bearded Lady who are going to be right on top of her, and she can deny so much damage with it. And I wonder if we see Senna ADC make a comeback because of her ability to not have projectiles in her auto attacks. Devil actually in a little bit of trouble, has the 6 here where the other team does not, so we'll be able to burn that for the safety right now, but no ultimate on him is going to be really scary because Tacos the Arena has just hit level 6 as well.
Yeah, Neptune wasn't even close. It was about 3/4 of the way there, and so that was a really nice idea. And once he gets the quickness, that's gonna be a different story. But at least for now, they've got a good advantage. With Polar, maybe looking to make a play. He's gonna back off it, but he does have the ultimate, and he can definitely look for something if he's able to combine that with his stun.
That's the really nice thing about having a 2-0-2 jungler in your pocket and in your side of the map as well, is that even if you are half health, you can just run at the enemy laner, knowing full well that if they turn around, that your jungler is going to absolutely delete them. And I think Accelerate, very nice read on that, knows that the jungler must be in the area, shows up on the ward just a little while after, and actually, we haven't talked about this just yet, but he also has the Glacial Augment here, and yet seems to be going for that Frozen Heart first. I wonder if we see him itemize into some of the more AP items, or if this is a pivot onto how the early game's gone.
Right, yeah, because going into this, you have an opportunity to kind of become a glass cannon Cho'Gath, but maybe he is recognizing, like, look, I'm going into 3 killers onto any gank. I just can't really afford to be actually a glass cannon. I will be decimated every time, and so that is a potentially smart pivot. Maybe he still ends up just like, maybe that's his only defensive item, and he appreciates the fall off of the Volley Bear and just goes glass cannon from here. So I'll be curious to see. We'll be keeping our eye on that.
Yeah, I don't think I would really mind either, just because of the immense value that a Cho'Gath ultimate can provide you when it is very nicely stacked. And I know the analyst desk talked about the secure as well, that gives you onto any objectives. Right now, with Mizzou securing the first 2 dragons into basically no contest, they're going to need the ability to steal them away later. Polar now going to get towered up on the other side of the map. They know that Bearded Lady is bot, but no follow-up damage, or not enough follow-up damage available onto Polar, means that we have a Ray backing and the Volibear lives.
Yeah, really nice shield there by Polar. Once he gets that shield, they can't even attempt to dive. Like, maybe they look for it then. Like, maybe they are like, okay, we're just going to shoot him quick and get the hell out of there. But they can't even attempt it because because of that shield and able to walk back under the tower. And did have the Stormbringer. If he had vision, I think maybe he goes for that kill on Array, but able to get out of there safely, and they're able to maintain this 2K gold.
And I like that you say that, you know, they're maintaining it, and I think that's exactly what we're seeing right now. But what I'd like to see a little bit more of is an extension of that lead, because we saw the Mount Everest of last game, and I know how frustrating it is. I'm getting PTSD just thinking about it. But being able to up that curve, right, build that peak, is going to be what keeps you in the game when you make these small missteps. And right now, the vision that I'm seeing for Mizzou is supporting what should be a more aggressive playstyle, especially around that bot lane. I just need to see them execute on it.
Right, and they're going to have a really hard time doing that because Silver Spurge is playing this mid lane so well. I think is really the beginning and end of it, right? Like, you're not going to be able to make those early game plays as Ghost Toasties on the bot side, but meanwhile, the top side.
Yeah, Bearded Lady seems like he's always in this top side, and Accelerate should be feeling like that too. It might be punished in the mid lane though with that Rift Herald summon. It seems like Accelerate going to get away as well. It's going to be a nice chunk of gold into your Orianna as well as Hecarim, who want to get themselves that first item.
Polar's just going to keep trending up top side, but yeah, like you're not going to be looking for a lot of those plays on the bot side just yet. You want Ghost Toasty to get that first item on that Jhin, and so that leaves Fuzzy the Owl trying to make a play in Silver Spurge, and maybe they finally do something here as he flashes away.
I love that double shockwave going to just barely save Silver Spurge's life, but the flash first from Fuzzy Owl almost spells his death. Fortunately, like you said, that Orianna being played very, very well.
And they have those first two dragons, so as far as extending the lead, they are getting the opportunity for it if they're able to land this third one, right? And I said that last game, and ultimately it didn't matter just because of how long the game was extended. It ended up going to a 7th Drake. But in most games, the case being, if you get that third one, you are like statistically significantly more likely to win the game because you unlock the Dragon Soul condition earlier and have Baron control, etc., etc., etc. The game gets easier as you get more Drakes, and so I think at this point they have to be like remotely content to sit and wait out these next 2 minutes. But I think you're entirely right though. You have a lead. You have to make sure you don't just give it up by attrition.
Yeah, and we're seeing a small extension of it, just in terms of, like you say, those objectives. And I think it's kind of hard to assign gold value to dragons so early on because of their shifting value as the game progresses. But right now, I think that we can call this a small extension. It's a small overextension might be had from Yavol. I'm really loving the fact that Tarek's stun cannot be canceled by Samir. That's pulling at my heartstrings. I'm so happy.
Yo, we're in another Ocean Soul too. I just looked now finally, and so shades of last game again coming to haunt us here. Is Accelerate maybe Polar.
We talked about the lane dominance of Volibear, but with him getting so low, he's gonna have to back off. And yes, he was already backing, but Accelerate now very much pulling ahead here, and looks like he's going for a Righteous Glory if I have my build paths right.
I believe so, and that's pretty smart, and I think sort of a standard of like a Cho'Gath top with this sort of build. Like, you're still getting that defense, but you're also starting to set up for a little bit more of that AP that you're gonna want later.
And Righteous Glory also very scary because it means that he can just run at you, and there's not actually a lot of disruption outside of Yavol that we see picked up for Mizzou. It's not like last game where they have a little bit more ability to stall you out with something like the Silas, and it wasn't the Ornn, it was the Shen as well. But right now, Polar is really the only true, or the really only targeted point-and-click stun that Mizzou have for themselves. Outside of that, it's down to Yavol's perfect play.
Right, and so now here as we're getting close to this next dragon, you know, they have an opportunity here. Bearded Lady's already here, so you have 4 members from Mizzou hanging out, and you're actually having Polar rotate. So unlike last year where they sort of gave up this third one away, they're making sure they get it.
And they're trying to shut down Bearded Lady before it starts, but the Terror Ultimate gonna buy so much time. Tunkos there already pulls the Inferno trigger just as the Cosmic Radiance comes down, but right on the flank, just in time, Accelerate picks up the kill. Fuzzy Owl going to go down as well, and it seems like there's just enough space spot for this Samir or this game. Array picks himself up a kill. The S rank is achieved. Inferno trigger is pulled again. Ghost Toasty should go down. The triple kill for Tacos, and all of a sudden the game comes up AFP, and they turn onto the dragon.
Beautifully played is a team, again, obviously from the last game especially, understanding how to play behind and understanding where they have strength. And they have strength behind Accelerate at this point, joining in late. They're able to pull off the Inferno trigger. Like you mentioned, there was a beautiful shockwave that happened in the middle of that fight as well. And ultimately, when you put that all together into a comp that didn't extend that lead as much as we would have wanted to see, as you highlighted earlier, and now they're able to have a slight lead of their own, and that's going to balloon after getting the dragon here at the 6-0 win.
And I'm extremely impressed by the patience of Anarchy Fallen Paladins as well. I definitely felt like the team fight wasn't going in their favor for that first bit, especially when the Cosmic Radiance came down. So much time bought for Bearded Lady, but time in the fight is also time for Tacos, as well as Silver Spurge, to be able to find those perfect angles for those ultimates that can change team fights so well. And Mizzou, they lose that third dragon, and last time we saw the third dragon stolen away as well. Do we see something like that where now we're getting a fight over the souls? Is this another game that's going to go the distance as Fuzzy Owl roams up to the top side? We're seeing a 2v2 right here. Accelerate's scary.
Accelerate's terrifying here, and has gotten, I believe, a couple of stacks. I'll have to check here in a second, but he's really going to be able to put a hurting on here. This is where Polar is going to start falling off pretty hard.
Fuzzy Owl, so much damage, but Array wants to trade it back. Goes right back in onto him, but Polar is ready with the chump. Fuzzy Owl forced to flash away, and Polar goes down. The Silver Spurge shows up right in the nick of time. Second Rift Herald being channeled as well. Should be the end of the top lane turn. Array is searching for Fuzzy Owl, gets shut down.
Yeah, and Accelerate playing that super well. I mean, they end up losing one, but they still have to get the tower, and I think they're going to be able to keep pushing here a little bit if they want. I think they're going to smartly stay, though, just let Fuzzy Owl take it. And Accelerate sets up 8 stacks already, so that's 960 full health, almost up to that 3K mark. And so just going to continue to be a really beefy boy on top of having a lot of AP power that they're looking to build into.
And yeah, and right now, I mean, getting another kill on Tacos the Arena as well is really huge. Yavol extending a little bit too much, not respecting the immense amount of CC that Anarchy have, means that they give over what is essentially a free 300 gold into the pocket of a Samira, who's already at her first item. This time, she built the Executioner's Calling, Paul. She did it.
Thank God. You know, they must, I mean, they had enough time after all that to look, and like, we told them throughout the game, like, that was just a move they absolutely had to make. And so thank God they did it. But jeez, in the meantime, that was pretty wild to keep track of.
And it's going to be huge into the Terror, who right now isn't even on the map. And speaking of not on the map, we're seeing a total turnaround from what we saw in Game 1. Mizzou held onto their Tier 1 towers for so long last time. Already 2 of them have fallen. And the next one, it's just a matter of time.
Right, and so now, I mean, the game is literally even, save for 1 tower in favor here of Anarchy Fallen Paladins. And the thing that's so different this game versus last game, among other things, though, is that how early this Samira now has the potential to be unlocked, right? Has the Executioners, has that Reaver, has the BF, and that's so massive when you're able to combine that with having someone like Accelerate and having someone like Array that can kind of jostle everyone around and be the people that walk in first, and then you just have this literal sweeping follow-through from Tacos. So I'm interested to see how that plays out, but Accelerate here.
The cross-map play, Polar going to be collapsed on again, but Accelerate has the chomp this time. Takes a bite out of Polar. This is not an Ornn matchup that we see Bolivar often slaying his brother in. This is a Cho'Gath, and the creature from beyond the void will take anyone down right now. Looks like he's even confident into Bearded Lady at this point, who started the game off 2-0.
Yeah, and this is going to be such a difficult fight from here on out for Polar, because you've already fallen off, and now you're, to use the pun, you're accelerating Accelerate even more and more and more and more, and it's just going to become a bigger problem as he just continues to stack off a lot of these kills. I believe he even got another one off of that, and so this is just going to become a much harder game, and I think this is finally where we see a swing where we never saw it in the last one.
Yeah, it's really the tipping point that we talked about, whereas, you know, last game, I think it was really in the late game that we were like, this is where the fights start to turn, is specifically around individual champion picks. This time it feels like the map state is what's dictating that. And with 14 seconds left on the Drake, and what looks like Mizzou already set up, you have to wonder how Anarchy Fallen Paladins can start to make their way in, find inroads here, because the setup from Mizzou is a way for them to get advantages back again.
And they accelerate on the flank, I think, is where my eyes are going to be this whole time. They have to start making it quickly, but if they're able to make a move in behind the quickness, they're going to have a hard day at the office trying to get this Drake ultimately. But accelerate, though, maybe it went in too quick.
Yeah, he does have a few of the tanky stats that we talked about. King Neptune as well finding the stun. Array is into the light. So was Splurge. He has the ability for the Shockwave. It does win! The Cosmic Radiance! 3-man Shockwave will end the fight in favor of Anarchy Fallen Paladins. Tacos de Arena just burning down, though, could be another turning point. Now the Jhin ultimate, 2 small people, Fuzzy Owl, very tanky at this point in the game. Should be able to take down Accelerate, even though he takes the chunk as well. And a fight that I thought was well and truly over after some beautiful play ends up just barely going right back into the pockets of Mizzou off the pick onto Tacos.
And that's sort of what I was afraid of where the fight could have been made. Accelerate goes in a little bit too early. The rest of the team was sort of passive. He had recognized, I believe, went in at the right time. He recognized the health was being taken down quickly. It's like, okay, we got to make the move. And the rest of the team wasn't ready to go over the wall and get over around into the river quick enough. And so he gets taken down much more than he would have been if they all moved in together. Because then you saw that beautiful turn, right? You see Array join and just dive right in. You see the Shockwave come through. You see Tacos able to put in all the damage. But the overall, the decimation of Accelerate was complete. He wasn't able to continue to stand in there and fight. Ghost Toast is able to clean up, and they pick up the third Drake.
Yeah, and that third Drake is really where the game's balancing point becomes even more clear, because we had talked about the way that these games can go back and forth and how we didn't really see a lot of clarity last game. We were at third Drake last game, and as soon as that dragon went over, we were also recognizing, Anarchy Fallen Paladins there. They're feeling really, really happy about having the Ocean Drake in their pocket, have a lot of sustain through these fights, and it puts a lot of onus on the other team. Now that Mizzou have that Ocean Dragon stacked up and ready to go, they can start to have a little bit more comfort, because if they just grab one more dragon, all of a sudden the timer that's on this game starts to disappear a little bit.
Right, and so now it's sitting at 10-10 again. I don't know that we're on a path to necessarily end up where we did last game, but it's going to be a lot harder for these to get an advantage, but a pick like that sure going to change things.
There we go, 11-10 right there, as you say it. We get ourselves another acceleration onto the board, and with no jungler, it means that Mizzou are not going to be able to contest this Baron as effectively already started up for Anarchy.
Yeah, and just now they're able to make that move on the Baron here. Maybe they're able to find a way in, though. I mean, Polar does have the ultimate, and here comes Curtain Call.
No Shockwave as well. Polar is ready, but Fuzzy Owl gets stunned up, gets taken down as another pick for Anarchy Fallen Paladins off what was just a lack of coordination, it seems. We'll see if Ghost Toasties can't find his way in. Has a lot of damage right here, and it doesn't seem like Anarchy Fallen Paladins are burning through this fast enough.
No, that is so greedy. And while we're getting a little bit of a soft reset there, shout out to Legends Esports GG for the raid of 18 viewers. That's absolutely massive here, and really fun night of a series. So thank you to Legends Esports GG. But yeah, I got scared there for a second, right? Because they're continuing this Baron fight. Sure, it's 5-on-3, but you're tanking Baron on top of, like, Bear Lady was coming up, and so really smart of them to back off, live to fight another day. And I think they have a real opportunity now to return to the Baron pit and make something happen. But this is just so hard, deal. We talked about this in the first game, and during our our analysis leading into game number 1. It's like you think you know what's supposed to happen in a game, and none of that stuff happens. It seemed like Tacos was finally going to be unlocked, but that 5-2-5 scoreline, I think it's a little misleading because of the ability they still have to delete them.
I think so, and that's mostly due to Fuzzy Owl and Bearded Lady, I think, is really where it starts to become scary for Tacos. But I think that we also have to say, in that last sort of exchange where we really saw Tacos be able to get blown up so fast, he didn't really have the items that he needed. Now he has the Essence Reaver. Now he has the Infinity Edge, and that scoreline starts to become a little bit less deceiving than it might at first seem before you get those item completions. Because Samira, more than most AD carries, isn't just reliant on the raw stats. And we're going to have a pause here and have a little bit of a chance to talk about the way this is playing out, as Mizzou look like they want to fight.
Yeah, it looks like they do, and I think we're actually going to be coming back fairly quickly from this if chat isn't lying to me. We can see it on our side of the street here, but I think one of the things that's going to be interesting as the rest of this one plays out and Anarchy ultimately looks to put this one away is figuring out how you continue to enable Accelerate without what happened in the Dragon Pit happening again, because he has to do these flanks and these different movements, but you've got to be aggressive with him. You can't be afraid to pull the trigger, and they were a little bit in the last game, and I think some of that's like residual fear that's come over, and they've got to shake that off and just not be afraid to throw everything against the wall and make it stick.
And that's really what it is, right? We talk about in pro play. We hear a lot of teams saying that, hey, if we int, we int together, right? And that's exactly what I want to see from this team. Ideally, it's not inting, but it is the togetherness that I want to see be able to come up for not only Anarchy Fallen Paladins, but also Mizzou, who in that Baron fight, you know, gave over the pick onto Fuzzy Owl, could have cost them the Baron. Wisely, Anarchy Fallen Paladins choosing to back off, but I feel like neither team is entirely on the same page just yet, and whoever wins that race to coordination is the one that's going to walk away with the victory.
It's crazy that we're almost 90 minutes into gameplay, and the coordination, like, the warm-up time is long gone, and they're still having some troubles, but I think it speaks to just how even these teams are, though. Maybe they're getting things started here.
Picking off Yavol is actually massive here, because it means no Cosmic Radiance, no utility is available, and now the pick over the wall onto Fuzzy Owl is going to force him out of the fight. This might be the fight already over for Anarchy Fallen Paladins. They turn their eyes towards the dragon.
Polar's just going to get literally stomped over the rest of this game, and I think that's where these fights start and end. You're basically entering these fights 5-on-4. You can see the CS difference. He's got Black Cleaver that's not doing anything into, you know, Cho'Gath, who is just straight up all health, right? Like, and it's easy to say, well, what about that 1-in-5 Hecarim? Array's job is just to force a flee and just literally jostle everybody around it. He doesn't have to live the whole time, and so when you make that fight then from effective 5-on-4 to a literal 5-on-4, they're able to just take that dragon away. And I think we're going to end up in a scenario like last game. They're going to get 3 Ocean Drakes. It's going to be really hard to kill them once again. And then it's figuring out, well, who gets the next Baron, which is already up.
And that's so crazy that we're actually seeing what seems like a long-form repeat of the last game, where we still have so many tools in both teams' pockets. It feels like Mizzou, through a series of small missteps, has given over what is, again, basically an even game. Now, small advantage even to Anarchy Fallen Paladins, and I think that the gold graph of this game is going to tell you even more when we turn back and look at it, in terms of how even it's been the whole time, but where that gold has been going as well. Because if we tick over to the gold graph, or to the gold on the individual carries, that's where we see the story being told.
Yep, Cho'Gath up, you know, 2200 there, accelerated. You know, sure, Bear Delay's up, but despite that KD, it's sort of misleading. It's only 1,000 difference, and at this point, I would call that effectively negligible, right? You're really seeing that difference, and those Toasties needs to be enabled, but you're still going to have to somehow curtain call through accelerate. Like, you're going to have to find a way into a fight where you're literally just going to be bodied out of it by Array. And so the difficulty for them is, how do you unlock your carry while still having to work through, you know, this gigantic alien monster from the top lane? I don't really know how you do that at this point, unless you're able to find a pick, you know, through another means or through some really careful positioning.
Speaking of that gigantic alien monster, by the way, he's surprisingly agile when he backs. Did you see him do a backflip right there?
Dude's got moves, honestly. Dude's got some mad style for being, you know, a 12-foot story building.
Yeah, and I don't think that we have any other character models that just go ahead and do that. But speaking of mad moves, Array almost gets taken down by Fuzzy Owl. Surprising amount of damage. Polar starts off the fight, turns off the tower, gets chunked out. Silver's push. He's trying to find a way in with this Ori Ball once again. No shockwaves come out just yet. Watch it! That's it. Broken one. Fuzzy Owl reports in as well. But the team fight being decided slowly but surely. Anarchy Fallen Paladins, they're finding their way forward. But Samira gets deleted by Bearded Lady. Being in Inferno trigger range also means being in shotgun range, young lady. and Baron lately makes this an even fight so far. Accelerate looking for another pick, might find Ghost Toasties, forces the flash away, and it looks like both teams want to back off, and I hope they do, because this is mind-breaking right now. Look at that backflip.
That's disgusting. That's wild. And I want to go back here really quick. Like, just the character model. He literally takes up like a half of the lane. Like, Cho'Gath is just, look at that. He's bigger than the towers. He's literally towering over them. But in any case, the thing with Accelerate now is that fight was dead to rights. Array is just destroyed, and then Accelerate joins and just goes full speed. He slaps on Righteous Glory and Locket and just goes face first in and just like, and just like destroys them. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like, you see in the movies, you know, like they call in the army to shoot at Godzilla, and it's obviously not going to do jack. That's what we're watching in front of us now. Jin is shooting at Godzilla. It's not going to do anything. And so, even when they get these picks, it's just going to be so hard to win these fights. And when you have these set piece fights like a Dragon Pit, you got to get a move around to Accelerate somehow, and they're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, and I really like the oversimplified win conditions that we get sometimes. Something that I've been saying a lot recently is we see a lot of Kassadin lock-ins, or I have personally, is you just have to win the game before Kassadin becomes the champion. And it feels a little bit harder for Cho'Gath, but I think I think it's, you just have to let Cho'Gath not touch you. And that feels really, really difficult right now.
Yeah, because he's just so big. Like, there's only so much you can do, and like, the whole point of Jin with Curtain Call is to take aim with the squishies. His body is too big for you to shoot past him. Like, it's gonna fill. Like, if someone actually, like, if you're watching chat and you just really want to prove this point, take a look at
There is the shockwave coming out, chunks out multiple members, causing gradients. Importantly, afterwards, though, Cho'Gath manages to touch Fuzzy Owl, though, and that means the fight is over. Yavol being separated once again is really an afterthought, and on the pathway to this dragon, as soon as the fight starts, it feels like it's over, and we saw it. The touching from the Cho'Gath is unbeatable.
At times in that first game, oh no, don't get greedy on this. They got greedy. They left Array in a one-on-one.
I think he can survive this until Silver Spurge comes over. Gets the smite at least, and is trying to make his way out. Orianna gonna shepherd him over, but they're getting greedy for multiple objectives, and it might just work out.
Yeah, and I think this time it will work out. In that first game, I think we both had a moment where we went, do we really understand League of Legends? Do we know what's supposed to happen? And now I feel confident in that again. Cho'Gath touches you, you die, they win the game because of that. And they're going to be just really, really difficult to beat now because of that.
I actually can't get over this backflip, but he manages to...
It's such a good skin. It's a beautiful skin. That's Dark Star, right? That's the one for charity, right?
I think so. Darkstar also, there's a Malphite skin that I have. It's Darkstar.
Oh, it's so
they feel
nice.
really good. But I really also like that they gave him the last nom on the Baron as well. Get him another stack and get him that much further ahead. And I wonder if I hover over this, if I can see how much yeah. His ult is doing, what is this? 1,000 true damage?
And he has
1,300 onto what's it called? Neutral objectives as well.
And he has 14 stacks for 2,200 damage. So this Cho'Gath right now, chat's covering it up, but I think it's like 5,000 health. 4,800 health. He's so hard to kill that you don't really have anything that's gonna cut through it. So they're just in a really difficult position here. They have the Baron. I want to see them push down at least one of these lanes too. Excuse me, get that second or that tier 2 tower. But even if they just kind of posture around the map and push everything in, that'll set them up for Soul. And that's GG. You're giving Ocean Soul to Cho'Gath with 4 Ocean Drakes.
And that's where the 3 dragons really come in. And yes, it's very late into the game, but dragons put a timer on the game, even if it is very, very late into it. Now, like you say, with the triple dragons on both sides, even if Mizzou get this, it's still going to be a very difficult game. And the Baron is doing so much work at lessening their chances.
It's weird though. I'm gonna compare this to TFT for a second because I've been. It's, you know, like you play against a comp and like you give Vayne like 3 rage waves and all of a sudden a champ's just overpowered because of one stupid mechanic. That's the stupid mechanic right here. You give a Cho'Gath, 4 Ocean Drakes potentially, and that's just broken. Like, there are still things that can happen in a regular game on Summoner's Rift that are actually broken, and we're watching one of those unfold. You let this happen, and as long as the rest of the teams don't like magically turn into bots, they should be able to execute around this.
Yeah, and right now, this is also what the analyst desk had talked about, because yes, it feels like we're talking about the Cho'Gath so much, but it's everyone else as well. Array is getting collapsed on right now, but the work that the rest of the team is doing is not going to waste. There's a turret going down on the top side, and it's because of the amount of time that they've had to scale. Everybody is a threat on their own. Even this hacker room requires 2 people.
Right, and I'll wait for this curtain call to finish. It looks like they're just gonna back out of it for free. But like, so even if you want to argue like, okay, well, yeah, but look at Jin's CS. It's still only a 1,500 gold difference. It's nothing in comparison to the 4K gold difference on the top side. Like that 4K difference in the teams is exclusively on the top side. All else is equal, and all else might not really matter.
Across the arena, though, he definitely matters, and this Cosmic Radiance is going to buy a lot of time for Mizzou. They almost get that pick. I'm being still a little bit unfamiliar with the kid of Samira. I was surprised that he got out there, but managed to just barely get away with his life. Those are the picks that matter, though, and if Anarchy can prevent those, they've still got a minute and 12 seconds to buy themselves, and then it's game.
It's really tough. So if we want to flip the script and really think about, you know, and as we appropriately should. So how does Mizzou find their way back into this, if at all? Fuzzy Owl is still a powerful assassin with a Ravening Cap. So, you know, there's still potential. You blow up a Samira, you blow up Rakani, even if you blow up Orianna, you're lucky enough to get in there that deep to pull that off. Cosmic Radiance through a fight, Ghost OCs is still fairly built up. It's not an absolute ludicrous IP. It's still a potential to happen. The difficulty with it is, again, how far Polar has fallen off, how difficult it is to pick off somebody when you're going to be trying to work through the level of CC and just like sheer power that this team has built up at this point. Is we're going to see the actual Dragon Soul one way or another in 20 seconds.
Yeah, the resets have come in on both sides, and Array fully backed, ready with the Guardian Angel as well as the Death's Dance is going to be able to suffer through a lot. Accelerate as well. Gargoyle Stone Plate on this guy. Very, very scary if they can find what you're talking about as the CC that is so fight ending at this point.
Yeah, and they're just look at that, like they're just able to walk through the river here and are able to take control of the pit just like that. And Baird is gonna be really careful. He cannot be the first one.
There we go! Throws, and the Inferno Trigger gets pulled. Samira goes long with a double kill, almost makes it a triple for Accelerate, gets himself that last stack, but that is the fastest team fight we've seen all series, and they're not even turning onto the Drake, they're turning onto the base.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful move. I don't know that you'll be able to get the Nexus. I think you actually have a real shot now because Array just went straight for that inhib. They can look to end the game here after that's almost 100 minutes of gameplay for 2 games in what was a really epic series, but they're gonna be able to put this one away behind a really nice comp idea for Accelerate and the rest of the squad.
Accelerate, he can just tank up these turrets. It doesn't even matter. This Cho'Gath has been a crazy hit, and I'm not even sure how you adapt to this as teams that are looking at Anarchy Fallen Paladins going into next week.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily what you're gonna do into Accelerate like that, because that's such a hard thing to play around, and it sort of speaks to why we had Anarchy. I believe both Power Couples had them at number 4 on our list. As I'm going to look at my second monitor here, but the point still stands. Yeah, we had them ranked as number 4, and we had them at 4 because we believe they're ultimately going to be a playoff team, right? And that's the sort of thing that a playoff team does. They barely eke out that first game after a bizarre up and down, and then they come out with something just flat out different. They were built different this game. They execute on it so well that last team fight, you hit the nail on the head. They're walking out of today like, guys, we nailed it. Like, because that's the feeling you're ending with, and that's what we saw to leave with.
Yeah, and that that feeling is going to be so hard to get over. I want to hear from our analysts once again, as we've only got a little while. We have a team waiting on their third game. As if you liked seeing Mizzou from week 1, you're going to love seeing Booyah from week 2, as well as a new team getting onto the stream today in Lotus. We're going to throw it to that game very soon, but before that, I want our analysts to be able to break down what happened at this past game.
Actually, as we do get our analysts in here, Dia, in the background here, we were getting some pings. And it looks like Lotus and Booyah are actually in the middle of that third game. Honestly,
Oh, really?
They might have finished it by now. We will get you those results as soon as we have them. But we would still throw over to our analyst desk here and let them kick things off for us. Zephyr and Beatdown?
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Moving forward here, what a game, what a game. I feel like it went one direction, and it kind of threw me for a loop, Mr. Beatdown, given the fact that Mizzou fixed every single mistake for the first 10 to 15, and then they made me really sad because then it flipped.
I agree with you there, Zephyr. I think we saw. I think speed run is apt, but it's also not, because this is still a much faster game than game 1, but it still wasn't that fast of a game. But it's the best way I could think about it. It does feel a lot like game 1. Mizzou, great early game. They're getting the early kills. They're playing it They're playing it exactly like they need to play it, and we loved it. Both games,
Yes.
we are watching like, yes, this is what they need to do. Oh my god, that's great. Early kills, I love it. But transitioning into the mid game, they couldn't find any good team fights. They had no way to shut down Accelerate on this Cho'Gath, who you highlighted in Champ Select very rightfully so.
Yes.
Who was honestly on a timer. He gets bigger once he gets more of those feast stacks, becomes this unkillable backline. And even though I hoped Fuzzy Owl and this LeBlanc could have the opportunity to make backline plays, it was really tough because of the superior vision we saw from Anarchy Fallen Paladins. There wasn't an angle for Fuzzy Owls to actually take, and whatever angle was open was blocked by Accelerate on this just large and in charge Void creature.
Right. The game slowly fell out of the hands here of Mizzou. They had a decent game for the first 10-15. It looked really great. They were playing towards their win condition, and then it just all kind of came to a collapse, and it goes back to their relative issues when they look at trying to close out games and finding success in major team fights. And it's something that we'll have to wait and see as Mizzou develops their JV team as they go through this heavy league. I think there are a series of talented players, but
Yes.
it's just not quite at that competitive level just yet. And I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I feel like this team definitely has a chance to fix and right themselves and put them on the best foot forward as they move towards these later weeks here. So they're not quite out of it just yet. I will say, before we throw it over to the casters as they go for an interview, which it will be with Tacos de Harina after a wonderful game there in the 80 carry role. The predictions are live here. We're still waiting on Lotus and Booyah Exiles. Hopefully Booyah Exiles wins for both me and Beatdown sakes. But just to give you all a little rundown, Anarchy Paladins take it 2-0. CGC take it 2-0. Jake Kelton loses out on that one, respectfully. Vlad Manners only take it 2-0. No one loses out on that. So we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there, and we'll update you hopefully as soon as possible. With all that being said, though, Beatdown, we're going to throw it over to Paul and Dia with the wonderful interview that they'll bring us.
What was that? Otherwise, I would never do that.
All right,
hello.
welcome to live, everyone. We've been thrown in here. It is Dia and Paul back as well with Tacos de Arena from